sex for pleasure is completely taboo. Itna shame is associated with just talking about reproduction and sex.
How do young adults in India consider their sexual activity? Are they ashamed of it? Are they scared of it?
Their parents will tell them कि घर में guests आ रहे हैं या family मामा आ रहे हैं या कुछ, don't wear shorts, don't wear revealing clothes. Why? It is your mama.
मामा जी को नेगेटिव फीडबैक नहीं मिलेगा, मामा जी को डरने की जरूरत नहीं है, पर आपकी बेटी को डरने की जरूरत है.
Where we're putting so much onus on women, but I think we also need to be having these conversations with men. They said that, ठीक है, whoever is our partner at the time, boyfriend, husband, whatever, they decide whether or not to use a condom.
How different do you think India is as compared to the developed world?
It affects your self-confidence, your body image, you're not feeling good about yourself, feelings like guilt, shame. You know, when somebody needs to get pregnant once they're married, we don't say, अरे तुमने sex कर लिया, तुम pregnant हो.
So I'm really excited today, very happy to have a very unique guest in the studio with me, and this is a 23-year-old who's talking about sexual health issues that young adults are going through. Niyati Sharma, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you run Prati Sandhi.
Yes.
Niyati is a 23-year-old who started this when she was 17 years old. So for the last 6 years, she's been doing this. She has finished her undergrad from University of British Columbia in Canada and is now off to Oxford to study law.
Yes.
I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you so much. So, Niyati, starting, I want to ask you a very basic question. कि Prati Sandhi जो है आपकी organization, this is creating awareness about sexual health, pros and cons, what to do, what not to do for young people in India.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? अगर Prati Sandhi ना हो, or if these kind of organizations are not there, people like you who are trying to make an impact in the society are not there.
Yeah.
What would go wrong? What is the problem that you are trying to solve?
So, I think ideal case scenario for me would be कि हमारी जैसी organizations की ज़रूरत ही ना हो, right? Because you would want something like sex ed to be talked about in curriculum. Because I think ये वाली conversation needs to happen at scale. Now, yes, organizations like mine are trying to kind of make a dent wherever we can, but to be able to actually change how mentalities work, because sex ed is, you know, it always seems like it's like a vacuum wala part of our life. Ki theek hai, sex is like this isolated thing, sexuality, sexual identity is this isolated thing, and then there's everything else. But that's not actually the case, right? It affects our self-confidence, it affects our relationships. You know, we talk about things like violence, we talk about rights. So it's not just मेरी biology क्या कहती है और फिर sex होगा तो reproduction होगा. That's a very like simplistic understanding of it. I think if we're not having these conversations, we start to see problems happening in all different aspects of life, right? It affects your self-confidence, your body image, you're not feeling good about yourself, feelings like guilt, shame. Then we also see, you know, the more kind of more traceable kind of aspect of it, which is, you know, you see more teenage pregnancies, you see more STIs, you see more cases of violence, people not recognizing their own rights, let alone standing up for them and accessing remedies for it. So I think there's a plethora of things that can happen. So I think what we're really trying to do is make sure that especially young people have access to information where they can actually make informed decisions about their health and their bodies and their life.
So isn't this covered in the school curriculums anyways?
No, so it's not. So at the moment, हमारे जो so states, like, you know, we have talked about, so states have their own curriculums, and CBSE में जो हमारा broadly follow होता है इंडिया में, there are 2 chapters, one is in 8th grade and one is in 10th grade. So basically उन 2 chapter में सिर्फ इतनी conversation होती है कि ठीक है हमारी anatomy क्या है, pregnancy कैसे होती है, वो conversation उससे आगे भी नहीं होती कि pregnancy prevent कैसे करते हैं, बस pregnancy होती कैसे है. And in most cases वो जब chapters पढ़ाए जाते हैं बहुत inconsistently पढ़ाए जाते हैं. In some schools थोड़ी सी conversation होती है कि ठीक है, you know, this is normal, ऐसा हो सकता है या ये होता है, right, that it's a reality. या फिर ऑन द अदर साइड ऑफ द स्पेक्ट्रम कुछ ऐसी टीचर्स भी होती हैं हु विल से कि अच्छा ठीक है आप ये घर जाके पढ़ लेना, फिर वापस आके कोई भी क्वेश्चंस होंगे. सो इतना शेम इज एसोसिएटेड विद जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट रिप्रोडक्शन एंड सेक्स, सेक्सुअलिटी, तो यू नो पॉजिटिव सेक्सुअलिटी इज अनदर थिंग. यहाँ तो सिर्फ रिप्रोडक्शन की बात हो रही है.
सो इफ CBSE came to you and said के कब सिखाना चाहिए और क्या सिखाना चाहिए, is it 2 topics, 3 topics, 10 topics, कितने topics होने चाहिए, क्या, what are those key points that people should know as they are growing up?
So I think one thing about sex ed is that it has to be age appropriate.
Okay.
Right? तो it's not a one time intervention कि आप जाओगे और आप इस age group से ये conversation कर लोगे और बात खत्म हो गई. Right? In fact, just recently we were working with an organization जिनके लिए हमने for the state government, in fact, we helped develop curriculums on sexual health. So उसका scope, obviously, you know, we had to negotiate what the scope of that will look like, but we had a lot more liberty in क्या क्या cover हो सकता है. Ab grade 1 to 3, you would probably be looking at topics like what is safe and unsafe touch, right? What is the right terms for my anatomy, right? So in fact, just yesterday I was talking to one of our team members who said कि जब उनको स्कूल में vagina के बारे में पढ़ाया गया था, they called it a blooming flower. So I was like, you know, but it's a part of your anatomy. You shouldn't have to use euphemisms for it. It's just like your hand, your leg, your brain, you know, you use the right terms for that. So for younger grades, you would start with talking about what is safety, what are your private parts, what are not private parts. You would talk about basics of consent, ki you don't touch somebody without their permission. And you keep reiterating this year after year, right? Now, when kids come to like say 4th, 5th grade, you want to start having a conversation around what to expect with puberty. So you may not go into specifics, but you might say something like, "ठीक है, your bodies are going to change. How will they change? How can we be prepared for these changes, right?" For instance, जब हम menstruation sessions करते हैं, half the girls have already started menstruating. But the point of like telling them about menstruation is so they're ready for it when it happens. So many girls get so scared when they get their first period because they're like, what is happening? Nobody told me about this, right? So just making sure that they're prepared कि अच्छा ये होगा, nothing to be scared about. Here's how you deal with it, right? Even for young boys, something like, you know, getting erections randomly, it's so common, but we make them feel so ashamed about कि ऐसे कैसे हो गया. It's something they can't even control, right, at that age. And then eventually you would start going into more details, and around the ages of like say 15, 16 is when you start talking about safe sexual behavior. कि ठीक है, okay, if you want to date somebody, what should your boundaries look like? How do you negotiate boundaries with somebody? How do you assess your own values around sex or even any kind of, you know, sexual behavior, hugging, kissing, touching, whatever it is. And you know how to kind of protect yourself. So generally 11th, 12th onwards ke saath, we will start talking about, okay, well, what are condoms? How do you protect yourself? What is the risk? And not just risk in terms of pregnancy, STI, but also risk in terms of potentially abusive situations, right? How do you recognize red flags and how do you step out safely? So that's kind of how I would approach it. Topics, though, I think are endless, but I think making sure it's an ongoing conversation. I would say in schools, at least 5 to 10 workshops every year for every grade are required at minimum to make it, you know, an engaging, meaningful conversation.
And right now,
It's probably one session in their entire school life.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow. So, okay, so that is what is happening.
Yeah.
What is the impact of this? Because they're having only one session, because nobody's talking in 1st grade, 8th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. तो इससे हो क्या रहा है हमारी सोसाइटी में? As they become 19, 20, 25,
Yeah.
right? कब तक problems चलती हैं और problems क्या हो रही हैं?
Problems start almost immediately, really, right? So, see, problems have a lot of different categories. There are problems like a girl not knowing about menstruation, getting super scared around her first period, thinking it's cancer, right? That is also a problem, right? Then you have kids who are masturbating, who feel like, you know, they've like committed a crime or something, or they feel like, oh my God, I'm going to get a brain tumor if I masturbate too much, or I won't be able to have children if I masturbate too much, my penis will fall off if I masturbate too much. You've got all these myths, right? Or by the time you get around to even clarifying some of that, most of them have been internalized. और आप कितने myths address करोगे, right? There's so many of them. मैं अभी भी अपनी team के साथ trainings लेती हूँ and I feel like, okay, this is a group of people who we expect to know quite a bit about sex ed. And still, some of the other time, you know, this one random myth will come and they'll be like, अच्छा, but ये तो सच है. And I'm like, नहीं, right? Like, you can't go to the kitchen. You can choose not to go, but you can't go is another issue, right? So those are obviously some of the challenges we see. Then we also see, you know, we see scenarios where young people especially have a lot of emotions. Adolescents run high on like hormones, emotions, everything is much more intense for them. So when it comes to relationships, right, even basic, you know, जो हम as adults बहुत seriously नहीं लेते, अच्छा बच्चे हैं relationship में, whatever that means, right? But you've got so much jealousy, you've got anger with each other. किसी ने किसी को reject कर दिया, उसने उसकी pictures फैला दी. Now that's a crime, right? Now, It may seem like a small thing to us, but because we've not trained students to deal with something like rejection, they are now blackmailing or becoming violent in whatever way towards their peers, their partners, their friends. Right? So I think that is one. And then as they grow older, I think questions around, will I get pregnant? How will I get pregnant? Is somebody going to marry me if I like have sex now and then later? How do I undo it? So those kind of challenges start to come up. So I think it affects so many different aspects of our lives in so many ways, both emotionally and physically.
Wow, crazy, absolutely unbelievable stuff. Now, the work that you've been doing largely in tier 1 cities?
Mostly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tier 1 cities में इस लेवल की प्रॉब्लम है कि लोग 11th 12th तक या 17 18 तक उनको ज़्यादा नहीं मालूम है, ज़्यादा सेशंस नहीं हो रहे हैं. So they are doing all kinds of things and being scared of those things and so on and so forth. If you move to tier 2, tier 3 cities, it must be even worse.
It is.
Right? So हम 17 18 year olds की बात कर रहे हैं. Is it possible कि हमारे देश में even 20 22 24 I mean, people
Yeah.
who are your age or even older than you,
Yeah.
are they also struggling? Are they also unaware?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think so because most of our work is in tier 1, but I can give you an example. We were working in homeless shelters across Delhi, and a lot of them are like, they've migrated from tier 2, tier 3 cities. And our sessions were on, contraception and so on with women. And, for some part of that project, we also worked with young men, which was, a whole other challenge in itself. But, one thing we realized, so for instance, हमने बात करी कि ठीक है, you should be using condoms, right? If you're engaging in sexual activity, especially if you have multiple partners or something like that. Because it can be risky, there's STI risk, pregnancy risk, all of that. While talking to the women, some of them came and told us, they said कि but ये तो हमारे हाथ में होता ही नहीं है. And I was like, what do you mean, right? And they said that ठीक है, whoever is our partner at the time, boyfriend, husband, whatever, they decide whether or not to use a condom. और अगर वो नहीं use करना चाहते तो हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते, right? So and they're like ठीक है, ऐसा ही है, मतलब it's on them, right? It's in their hands. It's not in our control. They will do whatever they want to do. So that sounds like a very clear situation of abuse as well, right? And also of risk because you're not able to protect your own self, right? And then most of these women had no idea about, other options for contraception. STIs, of course, only condoms can help. But for, say, something like, birth control pills, IUDs, things like that, no awareness. They're just like, ठीक है, मतलब condom अगर वो नहीं इस्तेमाल कर रहा तो मैं भी कुछ नहीं कर सकती, right? And this is, of course, they are mostly they're now living in tier 1 cities. So I would imagine the situation also extends across communities, right? Where having this conversation is just, it's an absolute no. And even when parents, we had one of our volunteers who moved from a tier 3 city, and they said that, their friends' parents had found them watching porn. And immediately, completely shunned the child, stopped talking to them कि पता नहीं क्या crime कर दिया और बस घर में बंद करके रखा कि तुम बाहर मत जाओ, these bad influences, phone ले लिया, for something that is such a natural part of sexual development. So I think we're seeing this a lot, and I think the situation is much worse. Tier 1 slightly better because even if you don't have as much information through formal sources, your internet access is much higher generally. Tier 2, tier 3 mein, that also starts becoming a challenge. So even people who want to find resources, it becomes harder.
So a very interesting point that you brought up, where the woman or the girl feels that sexual protection or using something like a condom is a decision her partner will make and she has no choice.
Yeah.
If he decides to use, fine. If he decides not to use, fine.
Fine, yeah.
Right? So do you think in the society the problem is greater with women, or is there a problem for men also?
I think there's a problem for both.
Okay.
I think the problems happen in different ways.
Okay.
Right? So जैसे अब यही same जो हम sessions कर रहे थे with the women, right? We had our male facilitators go and speak to some of the men while the female sessions were happening. And from their experiences, it was very much like अगर हम condom इस्तेमाल करेंगे तो हम मर्द नहीं कहलाएंगे. Right? So it's not just we don't want to use condom, which is also a thing, right? Where a lot of them just don't want to use condoms. They may not recognize the risk even to them because they're like, हमें क्या, हम थोड़ा ना pregnant हो सकते हैं, right? But then we were like, yeah, but STIs, right? You are also at risk. It's not just her issue, it's also a you issue.
So the boys don't realize कि अगर हम condom नहीं use कर रहे हैं तो they don't think हमको कोई problem हो सकती है.
Exactly. They're like pregnancy is the only issue and there's nothing else. So STIs is not as big of a concern, right? And then on the other side, it is just like, you know, this sense of manlyhood. कि अरे तुमने condom इस्तेमाल कर लिया, you should actually be having raw sex, so now you're not a man, right? So ये notions of masculinity are also very intrinsically tied because we are not having these conversations with men. We're not telling them that it's okay to want to protect yourself, right? It doesn't make you less of a man if you're protecting yourself and your partner. It's a good thing. So I think the problem is there for both, but you know, targeting the problem and solving for it looks different for both communities.
So are you saying the single biggest reason for boys not using, for men not using a condom is they feel it makes them more manly?
So at least from our experience, what we've seen and heard is, you know, one is they just don't want to. They're like, it's such a hassle, right? You have to go, you have to get it, you have to wear it. You know, putting on the condom feels like a turn off wala situation when you're, you know, in a sexual situation. You're like, oh my god, like this has just killed the buzz, so to speak. Then there is this aspect of oh, I won't be considered manly. There is also the notion that okay, it's gonna feel better, right, if we don't wearing a condom, so we want it to feel better, so we don't want to use a condom. Even in that conversation, I don't want to say कि अच्छा ऐसा बिल्कुल है ही नहीं. Some part of it is a myth, some part of it has truth. Sure, it might feel better for some people if you're not using it, but the conversation has to go beyond that also, ना कि ठीक है, if this doesn't feel good, what else can we do to protect ourselves? That question is becoming missing. So I think the conversation is just stopping at मुझे नहीं करना या मैं करूँगा तो ऐसा होगा या फिर अच्छा नहीं लगेगा. But उसके beyond protect फिर कैसे करोगे वाली conversation nobody's having.
So what's the advice for women? What should they do? Because the woman is saying, as per you, कि मेरी तो choice है ही नहीं. वो तो लड़का decide कर रहा है condom use करना है कि नहीं करना है. तो अगर वो नहीं use कर रहा है, the woman should know that there is a risk. She could get pregnant, she could get an STI, various things could happen.
Yeah.
So what is the advice for men?
I think, see, like a lot of these situations where we've seen ki it's only in the guy's hand, you know, coming from women, we've seen this tends to happen in smaller communities, like, you know, village setups, tier 2, tier 3, we've seen this. It also happens in tier 1. I won't say it doesn't happen in like, you know, just because you're upper middle class, this doesn't happen. It happens very much, right? But I will say these are very toxic situations, right? So you're basically, if you look at the facts of it, it is quite an abusive situation, right? Where you're like not letting the other person protect themselves and you're not open to that conversation as well. Because even women who've tried to negotiate those boundaries, you know, they maybe face a threat of violence or abuse or even just an argument, you know, that doesn't feel very safe. So I think definitely being able to, you know, if you're in a position where you can step out of that, I think that would be my best advice. Now, that's obviously trying to give a very perfect answer to a very imperfect situation, right? Our best advice, if you can't get out of that situation where you feel you don't have control but you also cannot leave, is to look at alternatives to protect yourself, right? So you've got female condoms now. Those are obviously still very detectable, but at least in terms of contraception, you've got so many different options for women, right?
Sure.
Which you can go to a doctor, you don't need your partner's permission to utilize them. So that is at least one way to protect yourself, right? But I would definitely say, obviously, looking at the facts of the situation, if it is an abusive situation, stepping out of it is probably the best way to protect yourself.
And tell me one more thing, one more question that is coming to my mind, and perhaps you are the ideal person to answer because you're a young Indian woman. She wants to have a partner, right? And क्या इंडियन वुमन के दिमाग में यह पॉइंट है कि चलो मेरे को अच्छा पार्टनर मिल गया, आई एम लकी. अगर इसने मुझे छोड़ दिया तो क्या होगा? अगर मैंने रिजेक्ट किया कि मेरे को नहीं करना विदाउट कॉन्डम, या मैं डिक्टेट करती हूँ टर्म्स कि मेरे को सेक्स ऐसे ही करना है या व्हाटएवर, इज शी स्केयर्ड टू से दोस थिंग्स?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing in like a young Indian woman's mind, especially given like the news that we're hearing, you know, from Kolkata and all of these cases, is fear. Like, I think 24/7 fear, which I think for like, even when I talk to my male friends, you know, they're sympathetic and they're empathetic, you know, we understand there's a difficult situation, but I think to fully grasp how all consuming that fear is very different, right? Because I remember even when I was in Canada, like on college campus, right? And I'm sure this will be true even when I go to college anywhere else, or even if I'm in a safe city, right? Or a safe place where I know security guards hain, ye hai, wo hai, you are not relaxed,
Oh.
You are fully like, I remember once I was, I think, walking from one class back to my residence. Now campus is closed. There's no cars. There is security. There's cameras everywhere. You know, you have a lot of provisions for safety. Even then, I think it was like what, 8 p.m., which is not even that late. I called my friend who was in India and I was like, no, you stay on call with me till
Oh.
I reach. Right? So it's like an all the time thing, whether you're sitting in a cab, whether you're, you know, going to a hospital, whether you are in school, you know, you're just getting dropped home. So I think just like how all consuming it is can be bewildering, right? And I think the worst part of it is that like a lot of these things happen with people that you know, right?
Okay.
So, like, for instance, when we look at child sexual abuse, majority child sexual abuse cases happen by somebody that you know. It's almost very rarely is it a stranger abusing a child. It is almost always somebody that the family knows, somebody from the family, a relative, because they have most access to the child, right? And I think same extends to women in many contexts where you see a lot of these cases happening inside the house, right, from their partners, relatives, so on, and it's really hard to have a conversation about it because you almost feel like you did something wrong, right? कि मेरे साथ ऐसा कैसे हो गया या मैंने कैसे करने दिया, and then you intrinsically have so much honor connected to sexual activity with a woman, ki, you know, her character, her honor, family's honor. So all of those things start to get tied in, making it harder to talk about. So not just is it like threat of physical violence, emotional violence, but also social, you know, sanctions that might be put on you.
Why are women thinking like this? So one is, as the woman is growing up, she's 15, she's 20, she's 25. Are we doing something wrong as a society, as a family, as brothers, as fathers, as uncles, as क्या हम कुछ गलत कर रहे हैं कि वो वुमन ग्रो कर रही है, 23 की हो गई, 25 की हो गई, 27 की हो गई, पर उसमें कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं है कि मेरे को किसी ने गलत टच किया, मेरे को किसी ने कुछ बोला, मेरे को आई डोंट नो क्या व्हाट ऑल इज हैपनिंग, बट व्हाई इज दैट वुमन नॉट कॉन्फिडेंट टू हिट बैक एंड से स्टॉप?
Well, I think it's very much like a, you know, like, okay, I might hit somebody, right? Like, let's, even if you look at it like from a physical context, right? किसी ने मेरे को कुछ बोला, I learned self-defense or whatever and I hit them back. They might hit me right back, right? So I think it's that fear of hearing something back. We have a massive culture of victim blaming, right? So it may not be कि आपके घर में ऐसा हो रहा है, ठीक है? Even though घरों में होता है ये. I have seen like my friends who, you know, as young as like 12, 13 years of age, their parents will tell them कि घर में guests आ रहे हैं या family मामा आ रहे हैं या कुछ, don't wear shorts, don't wear revealing clothes. Why? It is your mama. Like, why should it be a problem? Right. So we're intrinsically telling them, look, no, situations even at home are not safe. Now, it may be coming from a place of protection, but the message it is sending to the girl is that, look, it is unsafe. Like, it is family, but it is not safe, and you should.
मामा जी के आगे शॉर्ट्स मत पहनना.
हाँ, exactly. So it is your responsibility to make sure that you are doing nothing to invite an unsafe situation.
Because मामा जी को आप कुछ नहीं बोलोगे.
Yes.
आप अपनी बेटी को बोलोगे.
Exactly. So even now, अभी आप.
So होना क्या चाहिए? मामा जी को बोलना चाहिए मैं?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, there's something we talk to teachers also about is that आप किसी और के behavior के लिए किसी और पे burden क्यों डाल रहे, right? Now you know, we see even with the case that's happening right now, you know, you're getting news from like colleges that are saying कि लड़कियों को इधर नहीं जाना चाहिए, उधर नहीं जाना चाहिए, पर ये कोई नहीं कह रहा कि हम safe places क्यों नहीं बना रहे, हम safety क्यों नहीं ensure कर पा रहे, right? So it's like a given कि देखो ये होता है, आप अपने आप को safe रख लो. Right? So obviously the news you see coming, you see all this victim blaming, and then you're like, मैं कुछ बोलूँगी भी, तो what will happen of it, right? मेरे को 4 गालियाँ वापस मिलेंगी, and then the case will be closed, right? So I think this is like, I think that's what's creating even more fear to say something, because they're like, the backlash that will come when you say something is going to be 10 times worse than what has happened.
So, and I love that example that you gave कि मामा जी आ रहे हैं घर में, मामा जी के ऊपर प्रेशर, मामा जी को कोई कुछ नहीं बोलेगा, मामा जी को नेगेटिव फीडबैक नहीं मिलेगा, मामा जी को डरने की जरूरत नहीं है, पर आपकी बेटी को डरने की जरूरत है. और बेटी को आप बोलोगे कि आज मामा जी हैं, कल चाचा जी होंगे, परसों कोई और होगा, फिर सड़क पे जाओगे, तुम शॉर्ट्स पहनो ही मत.
Absolutely.
तो आई गेस हम उस बेटी को शुरू से ऐसा इमोशन दे देते हैं
बिल्कुल।
कि गलती तुम्हारी है अगर कुछ गलत होगा तो.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, essentially it's like you have to make sure कि तुम safe हो और तुम्हारे साथ कुछ गलत ना हो. किसी और की responsibility नहीं है to not do the wrong thing, right? अब कोई किसी को मतलब जाके murder कर देता है तो हम victim को थोड़ा ना बोलते हैं कि तुम वहाँ पे क्यों थे, right? We don't say why were you there, why did you get murdered, right? We always blame the person who did it, right? But somehow when it comes to like cases of, you know, sexual abuse especially, even towards men, we're always somehow blaming the victim कि तुम वहाँ क्यों थे, तुमने क्या पिया था, तुमने क्या पहना था, तुमने ही कुछ करा होगा कि this person reacted this way.
Because of all this, now this woman becomes 25 or at whatever age and is going through this challenge, right? So the advice that you will have, and it's the same question that I'm repeating, but the advice that you will have to this woman is believe in yourself,
Definitely.
right? Is that your advice, or is there more for the people who are watching this, women or men, but mostly women, I'm assuming? What is the advice? What should they do? They're walking on the street, they're going to an office, they're meeting a boyfriend, they're meeting just a college friend. What is the advice?
I think believe in yourself is definitely one part of the advice. It is definitely that, you know, you need to have like that your own confidence, but there have to be sources of that confidence, especially when you've grown up hearing these narratives. Right now, if we could change things right from the beginning and, you know, alter things, definitely I think that's best course of action. But for someone who's already grown up, like for instance, if I was giving this advice to me, right, I would definitely like try and put myself in a situation. So again, this is same narrative of like taking onus for your safety, right? Definitely calling out behavior where you can, and when you see small signs, right? When you see something like somebody laughing over a sexist joke, somebody making jokes about something like harassment, those are red flags. Just being very, very attuned to those and calling those out and believing in yourself when you call those out. Because I think when you wait for something much worse to happen, it is a far more dangerous situation for you, right? And of course, like all of the backlash and so on that we talked about. But definitely believing in yourself when you call those out and trying and taking as much action as you can. And there is always also a practical side to it, right? Like documenting what happened, right? I always tell all of my female friends, like, if you're feeling unsafe, if you feel like someone's following you, take out a camera, record it, make sure you have proof. Because the first thing that's going to happen when you're going to go to someone, unfortunately, and say, this happened with me, they will say, prove it. That's how our legal system also works, right? Now, there are pros and cons to that. There's a reason systems are that way. But ultimately, the onus is going to fall back on you. So there is always that practical side of, well, how do I ensure that I am placed in the best position to ensure my safety, and if I'm calling out dangerous behavior, to do so in a way that is still safe for me. Because even calling out jokes in, like, look at corporate cultures, right? You see so many sexist jokes, you see so many like callous attitudes about things like rape or like harassment, and you know, you call it out, immediately backlash comes. Like, you might get fired, which is like the more extreme side of things. You know, you're not called for meetings anymore, you're not considered part of the inner circle, so you're ultimately getting sanctioned for calling things out. So I think you have to almost make sure that you have some kind of backing or proof or just, you know, something to stand on, which is going to help you increase your confidence, right? Because that confidence is not going to come out of nowhere. It does come out of you taking those steps as well. Because unfortunately, believing in yourself is a good thing, but it's not quite enough.
Isn't making proof very difficult?
Very difficult.
If somebody is following you or saying something, और
Very hard.
आपके साथ मीटिंग में कोई बैठा हुआ ऑफिस में गलत बोल रहा है, उसको मतलब रिकॉर्ड करना शुरू कर दो, तो मतलब
Yeah.
I'm assuming for that woman it's really
Exactly. You're almost in a situation, even more dangerous situation, right? Because उसको पता चल गया कि तुम उसको record कर रहे हो, it's even worse, right? So like that's something I tell people, like, you know, it comes back to like all of these same things where we're putting so much onus on women, but I think we also need to be having these conversations with men. We need to be having these conversations with everyone around what is consent, what is bodily autonomy. You can't just be following people, you can't just be touching people. What are the consequences for that? And that has to be a very cultural thing that comes from all sides. It has to be reinforced by family, by teachers, by managers, whatever that specific context is. Because it's not going to be taken seriously अगर आपका जो boss है या आपकी family है या जो teacher है, are like, ठीक है, ये तो होता ही है. तो फिर how will you believe in yourself na to stand up for something? The infrastructure around you, the ecosystem has to support you in doing so. So I think we need to be a part of creating those ecosystems. So I always tell young mothers, or like, you know, as many mothers as we talk to really, is you need to be setting like positive examples for your children and especially for your sons. So same for fathers as well, where like, you know, it's not just the mother's responsibility कि वो बेटा कैसा पल के बनेगा. You set an example for like how they treat the women in their lives. So I think that is a conversation that's maybe a little bit missing.
And when this happens, there is a woman in the office or in college or on the road or with college friends or whatever, जिसके साथ कुछ experience हुआ.
Yeah.
Who should she reach out to? Cops, organizations like yours, parents? Because I think एक बड़ा question ये भी है लोगों के दिमाग में, because कोई इसके बारे में बात नहीं करता कि मेरे साथ हो तो गया अब. एक तो ये है कि मेरी अपब्रिंगिंग ने मेरे को ये कंडीशन किया है कि शायद मेरी ही गलती थी, मैंने शॉर्ट्स क्यों पहनी. दूसरा ये है कि शायद मैंने आई शुड हैव स्टॉप्ड हिम अर्ली इनफ. अब तो सेक्स हो गया, अब मैं किसी को बताऊंगी तो मेरा क्राइम हो गया. तो what would your advice be? And I keep coming back to you for your advice, A, because you are a young Indian woman, so, and I later want to ask you about your experiences, but, and the second, because I'm sure you deal with a lot of such people.
Yeah.
So who should they reach out to?
I think if their family environment supports it, family is probably one of the first sources to reach out to. I mean, look, ideal world, I would say, you know, immediately if something happens, you go to the cops, right? But even now, with, you know, the way our institutions are set up, even going to cops is not fully safe. You want to go with somebody, practically speaking, right? Like as a woman, you know, maybe I will feel a little bit better about going to a police station, but I will still not feel fully safe. That's what I mean by like this all-consuming fear of all the time everywhere, right? Ki main, even if I'm going to like a police station, if I'm going to a hospital, I still have a sense of like, I'm not fully safe, right? Physically, emotionally, socially, whatever, right? So I would probably say you approach anyone who's close to you, right? It could be your family, it could be your best friend, it could be whoever who can accompany you as you go through this process, right?
So ideally parents, ideally family.
Ideally family. Not everybody has that luxury. So, you know, whoever's closest to you, big brother, big sister, you know, anybody really, relatives, whatever. Then I would say, then go to the cops, right? So if you have 2-3 people believing and supporting you, and then you try and, you know, approach the situation from like a legal lens, police, case and all that, it becomes a little easier, right? And you don't feel as alone, because I think for anyone, even not just after abuse cases, right? आप किसी भी चीज़ के लिए आप केस फाइल करने जाओगे तो आपको थोड़ा डर लगेगा ना. You're like, what is this whole process? You have to navigate a whole new world, right? So I think having support in those cases can be quite helpful. If you're not able to find that support, then I would definitely say like organizations come in then. I would say organizations, even like ours or organizations that do offer support for these things, they come in a little bit later, because even approaching them is a process, right? आप किसी हेल्पलाइन नंबर पे फ़ोन कर रहे हो, आप किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को DM कर रहे हो saying मुझे इसमें सपोर्ट चाहिए, आपको उनको डिटेल्स देनी पड़ेंगी which you're sharing with a stranger again, right? For what is maybe a traumatic experience that you're sharing with a stranger. So even getting help from those sources is a process. So if you have a support system around you, that's fantastic. That's probably first course of action, and then like trying to seek legal support, medical support, whatever it is that you need if you're able to. And if you're then facing challenges, I think bringing in organizations helps.
Is there a helpline number if you're facing any kind of sexual harassment? In office, on the road, anywhere, is there a number that you can call and suddenly somebody...
See, I am always like hesitant to like share helpline numbers because they don't always work in our country. But there are helpline numbers most places. Like, for example, I know that metro stations, for instance, have a number ki agar emergency ho ya kuch ho, you can call, and they're pretty responsive from what I've heard from people, right? So I think those are good helpline numbers.
Delhi metro stations.
Delhi metro stations. I'm assuming they extend to other metro stations in other cities.
Sure.
But I can't guarantee. I know for sure about Delhi. Even like corporate offices, apartments, they tend to have numbers as well. So if you're frequenting a place a lot,
But there's no national 911.
there are national women's commissions and stuff, but every time I've called them, it's just kind of been a process to get in touch.
Even if you've called them.
Yeah. I mean, so whenever we do sessions, we always like any helpline number that we're passing on, we call it first to make sure कि अगर हम किसी और को बोल रहे हैं कि आप इसको phone कर लेना, तो वो number चलना चाहिए. So that's why I like refrain from sharing. Obviously, like 100 is something that you can always call. I
course.
think that's always there. I think बच्चों के लिए it's like 1098. It's the child helpline, so they seem to be relatively more responsive. For women, I think the problem is they tried to make multiple helplines because at different points in time they were like हम ये helpline, ये helpline, ये helpline. तो हर state की अपनी होती है, nationally भी एक होती है, but obviously the more macro you go in terms of helplines, the more of a process it is to get help.
Okay. So my next question is that it's great that you are not just a young adult Indian woman, you're also a global woman. You've lived outside India, you studied in a developed country. How different do you think India is as compared to the developed world? Is it similar? Is it...
No, I think India is like a very unique setup. I think it's very hard to like compare it to other countries. I think right now I'm particularly discouraged about being in India given the news from Kolkata. So, this always happens when you read a headline and you're like, oh my God, what is going on and like what is the state of the country. It's not always like that. There's always highs and lows. India, for people who have some money, is a great place. I think it's fantastic. I think for anyone who doesn't fall in that bracket, it becomes more and more and more challenging. So, like, for instance, when I was telling you that we were working in shelter homes, right? And we were interacting with these women and, so many of them told us cases of like abuse, of violence, किसी ने मेरी चीज़ें छीन ली, किसी ने ये कर लिया, all of those things. And obviously, our next advice is always, well, go to the cops. You need legal support. You need to go to an organization. You need somebody who can support you. They're like, वो नहीं help करते, right? So, agar even as an organization, my advice is, well, go to the legal system of the country or go to the police, and they're saying they are not helping us, right? Or they are involved with the people who, did this. Then what next? What do they do next? Because your, opportunities for recourse, तुम कितनी बार वही traumatic experience कितने लोगों को जाके repeat करोगे till someone takes you seriously. And then even if somebody does take you seriously, to go through that lengthy like legal process while also getting threats from whoever like was the perpetrator is a whole other journey. So I think those kind of factors can be quite discouraging. I don't know how similar it is in countries outside. I imagine at least some of them have very similar challenges. I'm not saying like their legal systems are perfect and
Sure.
only we have problems. I think it's the case worldwide, I would say.
But my question is, did you feel safer when you were in Canada versus India? Do you feel as safe in India? Because you're not from a poor family, clearly. So, but even for somebody like you, do you feel as safe in both the countries? Or do you feel...
So, I mean, I would say it depends. So I think even for me, like I said, like as a woman, there is always fear. There is no situation of no fear. Okay, so that's already out. It doesn't matter which country I'm in. I would be in the safest country in the world and I would still feel unsafe, whether there is an active threat or not.
Sure.
Okay? So that's always there. I would say there are some places and some areas where you feel safer, in which case I would say that India and like, being abroad are quite similar in that respect, because even when I was studying in Vancouver, there are areas where like drug addiction is like rampant, homelessness is rampant, and it's a challenge they're trying to grapple with. But if I was walking there, I would feel very unsafe. Compared to that, if I was like walking in a street in Delhi, I may not feel as unsafe, right? So there are parts of countries abroad where you might feel the same level of like being unsafe, and you might feel just as safe in India in some parts. It all depends on where you are. And I think where you are and in what ways you are there, again, really correlates very highly to your socioeconomic status.
Okay. Next question, going back to your sessions in schools and with other organizations. At what age do these things begin? Sexual awareness, activities, masturbation, partners. At what age is the earliest, and what is the most common?
So yeah, like for masturbation, we discussed like starts as young as 10,
Okay.
right? Sometimes like 8 to 10 is like the earliest range. I would say becomes quite common around 13, relatively.
And it's happening at 8 to 10, but nobody's talking about it. Nobody's educating you.
No. Yeah, I think you would see like a small subset starting to get exposed to ideas of masturbation or starting to experiment. And then eventually, it picks up and it becomes like a more common thing where everyone's talking about it. I think for girls, masturbation starts a little bit later, or at least the conversation starts a little bit later. Where you definitely have boys having that conversation at least with their peers, if not with anybody else. With girls, even that conversation with peers is like a little bit no.
Sure.
So it happens probably, I would say, like 15, 16 is when girls are probably talking to their peers about like, oh, this is a thing. Even then, I think it's very little among
Sure.
women.
Sure.
But it's not that it's not happening. And then I think when it comes to like romantic interest, I think romantic interest can again start as like 11, 12, where you're like, oh, I like this person, or this person's cute, So like in the most basic sense of romantic attraction, that starts. And I think sexual attraction, I would say around 14 earliest, and then by 15, 16, it becomes a little bit more. 16, it becomes quite common.
Okay. Okay. So 16 is the common
Yeah.
age when it's happening, when you might have a partner or
Yeah, where you're maybe like experimenting with like hugging, kissing, basic touching. You may not be having sex. I think sex is still in India, at least with the groups that I have interacted with in schools, sex is still happening like around 17, 18. So you're pretty much at the periphery when it comes to like age of consent. So most people I think are having sex when they're adults, but there's quite a few people who experiment before. But I would say they're doing other sexual activities between 16 and 18.
And after doing so many sessions for so many schools and homeless people and all that, how do people, the young adults in India, consider their sexual activity? Are they ashamed of it? Are they scared of it? Do they recognize that it's okay? It's normal. How are they reacting to it?
I think there's a full spectrum of responses. On one side of things, you see like very liberal, it's comfortable, it's casual, you've got friends with benefits. There may not be like an aspect of like I'm protecting myself or like awareness of like the consequences or like too much analysis of it, I would say. But the sexual activity is, quite liberally happening. I would say for the vast majority, they are still very much like, oh, this is bad, right? Or like, I shouldn't be doing this. Or if I do it, it has to be like, it's going to like be all end all. Like, I will do it when I get married or when I've met somebody that I want to get married to. So, yeah, I think for the people who do end up having sex, a lot of them, it's like a split almost, where some of them are like very comfortable with the decision. They went in knowing like I want to do this, especially if it's happening in a partners wala context where they've been dating the same person for a little while. They're like, okay, I want to do it now, right? So that's potentially a good thing. On the other hand, there's like, oh no, मैंने क्या कर दिया, मेरी शादी कैसे होगी? Like my mom still tells me examples of like women coming to her and she's a gynecologist and, women would come to her and say, अच्छा मेरी शादी होने वाली है और I have an arranged marriage now, but I had a boyfriend before this and we had sex. So I want to get like a hymenoplasty or something so that उनको पता नहीं चलना चाहिए कि मैं virgin नहीं हूँ. Even though there's no real way to like know if somebody's a virgin, but there's this fear in their mind कि मेरी शादी ही नहीं होगी अगर किसी को पता चल गया कि मैंने sex किया था. To the point where I will get surgery to artificially like recreate the hymen or something so that, people don't know.
And do people actually get the surgery?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Lots and lots of people. And like, this is like tier one. I think this is very common. I don't think it matters how educated you are, how much money you have, where you live. This attitude and this notion of like virginity and character and honor, especially in the women's body, it's widespread. It breaks all barriers, I would say, I think.
And what do you see as the opinion of sex or sexual protection or respect in a relationship? Adults, married, not married, doesn't matter, but living together, married, boyfriend, girlfriend, is it still lack of awareness? Is it fear? Is it conditioning? Does it continue?
I mean, I think a lot of people just, I don't think it's necessarily fear for
Okay.
adult relationships. It can be in some context, especially when there's abuse involved. But I think that's kind of like, there's a lot of considerations there. But I think for a general like relationship, I think there's just the problem of not talking about it. You've never talked about it, so you continue to not talk about it, right? You don't talk to your friends, you don't talk to your family, you don't talk to your husband, you don't talk to your wife. So it just kind of continues. It's just the relationship of who you're talking to that changes, right? So many people have like not consummated their marriages, have extramarital affairs because they're not finding what they want in their partner, or they feel like, we have people come up to us and say, oh, I have this kink and I can't talk to my wife about it. Or like I can't talk to my husband about it. I can't, tell him what I like, or I can't tell her what I like. I'm like, well, you're married. You should be able to tell each other what you like. But because it's like, wo mujhe judge karenge, or, I'll be shamed for having a preference or for liking something, then I'm just not going to mention it. I'm going to be unhappy about it, but I will not talk about it, right?
And again, the core reason for that is conditioning.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, the other thing that I feel, and you are the expert, so you should tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I feel sex is considered to be a taboo
Yes, you're
from the
absolutely
beginning.
right. Yeah.
Don't talk about it, don't do it. It's only after marriage, and even then in the room. I did another podcast with a doctor who's also a sexual expert, and he's an embryologist.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how parents don't talk to their children about sex, but he says they don't because they don't talk to each other also about sex.
Yeah.
Right? So, in my mind, this whole issue is happening because sex as a concept is considered to be a taboo.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? What do you think?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I would say that I think, I would add maybe like another layer to it. I think sex for pleasure is completely taboo. We are, when somebody needs to get pregnant once they're
Excellent point.
married,
Excellent
we don't say, Ari, tumne sex kar liya, tum pregnant. I mean, obviously, if they're pregnant, they've had sex, right? We never say like it was weird or why did you do it or how did you get pregnant, because we expect them ki theek hai shaadi ho gayi, now to you will have sex, right? But sex for pleasure, I think, is something that is very stigmatized. It's like, how dare you do it just because it feels good, right? Same for young relationships, where that's why we say wait till you're married, right? Because we almost only imagine sex in the context of reproducing or having children or, building a family. We don't think of it as something you do because you enjoy it and you like it and you want to do it.
So you watch a movie, you enjoy it, have a Chinese meal, you enjoy it, you have sex, you enjoy it, but no, don't have sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Chinese meal is okay, movie is okay, but sex
Yeah.
is not okay. Yeah. The other question I had was, so, you clearly seem to have a lot of knowledge and understanding of what people should do, what the problems are, who should they reach out to. A lot of these problems, I've worked in the corporate world for a long, long time, and I think a lot of these problems happen in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Do the corporates call you for sessions?
Very few, I would say. And mostly, so I mean, we've done sessions of late on like pride culture, we've done it on pride history, we've had sessions with corporates, with the support staff in corporates, so not the actual employees. I think it's tricky ground for corporates, especially when it comes to sex ed, because they almost only really discuss like posh, right, sexual harassment. But I think talking about sex in general in like a professional setup can be like a little tricky, because you have to, there's very fine line where like that conversation becomes a little murky, and like not appropriate for the workplace. So generally with corporates, it's mostly in the context of posh. When we've done sessions with like support workers, it's been about menstrual hygiene, right? And we had like lots of revelations from those as well. And then also like, around pride, queer culture, inclusivity. So that it's kind of slightly more soft topics, I would say, when it comes to sex ed.
Okay. And that brings me to the whole queer, LGBTQ, gays and lesbians community of the country. Do they, because that is even more, under the table and under the carpet and nobody talks about it. And so I'm wondering what happens to that 11, 12-year-old who's sexually curious and active, but towards the same sex or belongs to that community. And then they grow up and become 20, 25-year-old and 30-year-old. And so what about them? Do you see a bigger challenge for them? What's happening with them?
So I would say for LGBTQ children, there's different challenges, definitely. So I think, there's this notion of like, acha ye jab adolescence mein honge, like once they're teenagers, they have confusion about their sexuality and so on, right? Now, this is for the most part not the case, right? Children quite young, like 5, 6 years old, right? Now, this is a study from US, so it may not fully translate to the Indian context. LGBTQ or identify a certain way, they start feeling a sense of otherness from their peers as young as 5, 6 years old. So they may not know what it's called, they may not know what it is, they may not even fully understand like their own feelings at that point, but they're like, I am different from my friend. They understand that I'm different in some ways, right? As they grow older, this difference becomes a little bit more evident. They start to understand that, okay, it's a difference of who I'm attracted to, right? It's a difference of how I feel in terms of my identity. It's a difference of how I express my gender. So I think you start to kind of grasp the vocabulary of how to communicate this otherness almost. I think in India, especially, we see a lot of bullying. We see much higher rates of depression and suicides among LGBTQ children, even at the school level, university level, it continues. So a lot of challenges in terms of, just casual jokes, ki tum ye ho, tum ye ho, slang, all of those things. So I think that is a big challenge. We have, I think, what, like 10% of our population is LGBTQ roughly, but I think only like 2 or 3% are like out of the closet, right? Which is where they're able to say yes.
2 or 3%.
2 or 3%, yeah. And this is also just like stats, right? So even when you're doing research, there's a lot of people who may not even like say it, right? They may not say that yes, I'm gay, but I don't say it, right? So there's probably more. The number could be lower.
Do you think there are people who never say it?
Absolutely, yeah. People, I mean, I remember this, one individual who had reached out to me and they said that, he was a gay man and I think he was in his like early 50s and he's married. He has children. He's married to a woman. He has children. He's like, but I'm attracted to men and I'm gay, but I like now he's, married. He has children. Like, what do I do about it? Because
50 years old.
he's 50 years old. Like, and he was like, oh, can I come out of the closet now? And I said, well, you can come out of the closet whenever.
Yeah.
But obviously, there is going to be, it's going to be a challenge for sure, right? Because you have so many different parties involved now in how that's going to affect them. So I think people go their entire lives without, truly being able to acknowledge their identity.
My God. So you've already answered my next question, which is, so not just children, what happens when they become adults and they're 20s and 30s and you've gone to 50s? And so you're saying there are people who are from that community who are gays or lesbians or whatever, and they never tell anybody.
Yeah.
And for them, sexual health and sexual practices must be like really, really bad.
Exactly. I mean, you're basically going against your own nature, right? And I think this is, I would say this is far more common in, states or regions or cities, or even towns, I would say really, small towns, especially where everybody knows everybody, right? Place like Delhi or Bangalore, you can blend in, you can move and like realistically never like run into somebody right? Because they're big places, lots of people. Small towns, everybody knows everybody. You tell one person, the whole town knows, right? And if there is very strong stigma in those places, your physical safety is at risk, right? Like it's not just a people won't accept me, like I'll feel bad about it. It is very much a, people will like be violent and aggressive towards you. So I think that is like, that just adds another layer of, well, I just cannot come out. I just have to conform. There's no other way.
Okay, one of my last questions. So Niyati Sharma is going to Oxford to study law.
Yes.
So Niyati Sharma, the future lawyer, if you could change a law in India, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good one. There's so many of them.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I actually feel that like with India, like with certain laws, I think we've done a pretty good job. Maybe their implementation might be lacking, but I think in terms of law, we've done a good job. Like for instance, abortion being legal and so on. I think we're far more progressive than so many other countries when it comes to those things. I think one would definitely be issues around rape and harassment, also taking into account male and LGBTQ folk. Because I think that's a recurring question that I also, one, grapple with myself, and also we get asked about a lot, right? Like, like, oh, only like man can rape a woman. What happens to men who get raped, right? Because I think definitely I would say India is much more unsafe for women than it is for men, but it is also unsafe for men. And I think that is one law that I think could use a little bit of tweaking.
Sure. Very, very good. And I don't know if you have the answer to this question, but is that happening a lot? Are men getting raped a lot? And when they do, is it easy for them to lodge a complaint? Is it?
No, I think it's quite challenging for them to lodge a complaint, because I think if, women have that fear of like,
Sure.
I can't say this happened to me. I think men even more so, because it's almost like their manhood is tied in it, right? Like,
Right.
it's like, oh my God, how could you get violated? Like, you are a man, right? One is that, which comes from an internal source. And I think the other aspect of it is just like that people won't take you seriously almost, right? Like, if you say, oh, I was raped, especially if you were like, for instance, raped by a woman, it's almost like, yeah, but you should have enjoyed it. It's like that kind of narrative of, men should always enjoy sex and they do always enjoy sex. So why is this a problem? Like, it can't possibly be a problem. So I distinctly remember, in fact, this happened with one of my male friends, and some girl that he was talking to sent him like pictures of herself without talking about it, right? And he was like, I did not ask for this. This is really weird. Why would somebody send me like pictures of their body without saying it, mentioning it, or, if it's been made very explicit that we're in that kind of a relationship. And, initially when I heard it, and that actually helped me reflect on my own biases as well, where I was just like, yeah, you're right. Because if a guy sent me a dick pic, I would like be very enraged about it. And I would be like, what is this? This is absolutely not okay. And we talk about that side of things so much. But it's almost as if it happens to a man, it's just like not, it's not a problem. It's not
Right.
real. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Wow. Very interesting. So maybe the last question is, so Niyati at 23 is, and I've met many people of your age, you're perhaps the most vocal, aware, confident, knowledgeable, social activist, doing a great, great, great job. I'm so proud of you. How do you feel? And this is a message for other women who are your age or around your age, that if somebody wants to become like that, how does it feel? Do you feel very good? Or do you feel sometimes insecure and unsure of, will men be scared to be your partner because you're so confident? So how do you feel?
That's really funny, because my mom always says, "Tumhari shaadi kaise hogi?" She's like, "Oh, your husband's gonna have such a difficult time," and I was like, "He will deal with it." But I think it's a mix, highs and lows. When something good happens, or like when we go for a workshop, for instance, and I actually like I'm able to have a lot of these conversations, it feels like, okay, yes, we're on the right path. At the same time, I mean, I'm not so worried about like a future partner and my work. I think for me, the fear is just more of, you're talking about such a sensitive part of people's lives. And I think saying something wrong or giving the wrong advice could really, it could impact their lives. And I mean, I'm sure like for doctors, it must be like 10x, because like they're fully relying on their advice. I still always make it very clear that we're educators, we're not doctors. So, we're not going to be able to solve your specific problem. But yeah, I think there's always like this fear of like, okay, well, what if I'm like passing on the wrong message, right? Especially when we do sessions with children. What if I let a bias come through and I end up passing that on to the students, because that's something we train teachers to not do. So what if I'm invariably doing it, right? So I think it's a lot of reflection of, I hope I'm not, misstepping, because it is such a sensitive area and because it's so taboo that people might only be having this conversation with you or with maybe one other person. So there's not a lot of sources to correct what you're saying.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I think there's a little bit of fear there.
I think your mom has a very good question, and I have an advice.
Yes.
So you are the expert here, but my advice would be that women, including yourself, should feel good about yourselves because you're doing such a great piece of work and you're so confident and so aware and so vocal and such a social activist. And the one thing that you will be confident about is that nobody, hopefully, nobody will harass you, misuse you, abuse you.
Yeah.
And the guy who falls in love with you and accepts you for all this genuinely loves you.
Yeah.
So why not be somebody like you?
Absolutely.
Right? So my encouragement to all women will be like Niyati.
Thank you.
So great piece of work. The last question is, how do people reach out to you or to your organization?
Yeah, so we're quite active on social media. Thanks to our team, because I do, like, I'm not a social media person. But yeah, I mean, people can look me up personally on LinkedIn. I go by my name, Niyati Sharma. And I'm also on Instagram. Our organization, Pratisandhi Foundation, we have a website which has all of our socials. So it's just www.pratisandhifoundation.com. And then, we're also on Instagram just by the name Pratisandhi. So quite easy to find, because I don't know why 6 years ago I picked such a complicated name that people struggle to pronounce still during our sessions, but still makes us easy to find.
Sure, great. And anybody can reach out to you. There is no age limit, there is no gender, there is no sexual orientation.
No, anyone.
Any age, male, female, anybody can reach out.
Anyone.
Great. What a great work you're doing, Niyati.
Thank you.
You will do well. There is no doubt about it. People like you are required in this world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. And I'd love to stay in touch and see how your journey goes forward.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.